Hello everyone, welcome to this exclusive interview with Professor Rishikesh from the Department of Commerce. I am Vishnu P. Nair from MAMCS and I'm truly thrilled to have Sir here with us. Today we'll be talking about e-learning, the progress of online education and the state of hybrid classes. Hello sir.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Could you give us a brief introduction about yourself?
That's a sort of an most embarrassing thing to do, but I think I can speak specifically about my professional journey. Is that okay? Okay. I joined Christ in 2010 and I continued working till 2015. Took a break and went back to my parent institution, Indian Institute of Management, back in Kerala. I was working there in the Research and Publications Division as Senior Research and Publications Associate, and then I returned in 2017. And I continue in the department as an assistant professor, but my journey as an academician started way back in 2008 when I completed my studies at Delhi School of Economics, and it was a conscious choice to get into this profession of teaching, which I don't think I still have regretted. It's been going good so far.
So with the unprecedented events that have been happening since the last year and the pandemic and the lockdown which followed, online education has truly been a blessing. So apart from being a blessing, it has also been a challenge. So being a member of the faculty, what has your experience been like in terms of online education?
Well, the most negative term in 2020 was to be tested positive. Well, despite all the kind of chaos and the confusions that we had, I just wish to relate with what an observation was made by Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. He said what we had anticipated, what change, a digital transformation we had anticipated for the next 2 years had happened in just 2 months. So that was one of the major shifts which happened, not just in the corporate, but also in the academics. I still remember a cartoon which was going rounds in the social media. It was more like an MCQ. And the question is, what led the digital transformation in the organization? And they gave 4 clues. One is Chief Executive Officer, one is Chief Technical Officer, and the third is COVID-19. And the answer is obvious. So in a lot of ways, organization, including academic institutions, were compelled to or forced to shift from a conventional mode of education to a newer platform. And it wasn't easy initially because virtually everything was virtual. Now, let's say as an academician, my preparations were virtual, my delivery was virtual, my assessments or examination, the evaluation, the invigilation, the admissions duty, the research work, the seminars, the workshop, webinar, you could name it, everything went on virtual. So it was not that easy in the initial phase, but that's only one side of it. But if you look at the other side, the kind of effort that the administration has put in to set up the infrastructure and also to kind of mobilize all resources to ensure that the continuity of education isn't broken, that needs to be really appreciated. So for me as an academician, it has been a mixed experience. Of course, I did experiment with a lot of newer pedagogy, tech-based pedagogy, and there were of course a few challenges too, which I think we have successfully done, because one whole batch had graduated through online classes. In fact, the convocation also happened online, and we still continue the learning process. So there are both positives as also negatives, which I had experienced.
So it's been a year since the pandemic started, and all teachers across the world have kind of changed the way they teach, including you too. So how have you seen education and online education progress throughout this whole time frame?
Okay, I should be a bit honest here. For me, the initial excitement is over, because for me the kind of saturation had crossed by October or November. But then the thing is, because everyone has kind of found the loopholes in the system. One semester is over, and both faculties as also students were trying to reduce the screen time. So for me, there are two aspects which I think needs to be discussed. One is how do we engage the students and make the learning process more meaningful. That was one major kind of change which had happened in terms of the mindset of the entire academic ecosystem. The second is about ensuring the learning effectiveness, because students are scoring well, but how effective is the learning? That was a big question mark, which even I realized when we recently took an interview for the postgraduate programs, especially from the students from our own campus. In terms of their communication, in terms of the confidence they have, or the general awareness, the subject knowledge, it has considerably come down. So, I mean, those are two aspects which I'm a little apprehensive about. Learning effectiveness, as I said, and also keeping them engaged, keeping the students engaged in the learning process. So, those are areas which we need to still work on.
So definitely education carried on. We didn't stop education, online classes happened, but with all the benefits that come from online education, there were definitely challenges as well.
Right.
One such challenge is keeping students engaged through an online platform, because we don't see them face to face. So how did you manage to keep students engaged?
Okay, well, before that, let me just give you a pre-COVID scenario. Now, before COVID, good teaching was never acknowledged or recognized. I'm not saying completely from all the stakeholders, but it got limited within the students. Or bad teaching was never punished. Now today, since the entire teaching learning process has gone online, it has brought in a lot of transparency in the system. It's not just the student who's watching what you're teaching in the class. It's sometimes even the parents or our own alumni, the entire stakeholders. So we've become more accountable in terms of what we are delivering, because I've heard some parents saying, is this for what we are paying so much? I mean, is this the quality of education that we are, I'm paying for? Another concern is, oh my God, I never knew this is the quality of education that's happening. I mean, there are both sides of it. So what I'm trying to say is, it's a sort of a transition phase. So just as everything has a kind of a life cycle, this is also having taking its own time to get adapted to a newer system.
So since things are getting better now and schools are opening up, everything is slowly opening up.
Right.
So we've seen a transition from online classes to hybrid classes.
All right.
And so how did you kind of adjust to this new form of hybrid classes, and how did you go about it?
Okay. Hybrid classes, the transition from conventional to online was more difficult than shifting from online to hybrid, because hybrid was just an extension of the online, which of course there were a few more additional experiments. So it was fairly easier than the earlier one, which we had done long back in the early 2020.
And what are some of the techniques or methods you kind of implemented in your teaching to keep both online and offline students engaged at the same time, because it can be complicated at times?
It was. Well, as I said, newer challenges gives you newer possibilities, and that's something which, as an institution, we had tried to excel at, and also at an individual level, faculties have been trying to experiment with. So there were a lot of newer pedagogies that were tried. For instance, I had never used Mentimeter so extensively as much as I'm using currently, or other platforms. Like I teach entrepreneurship. Now there is this platform called leanstack.com or canvanizer.com, which is where people could collaborate and work together, and those are the online platforms which we have not tried earlier at a level that. So a lot of newer methodologies of teaching, or Kahoot is a kind of a quizzing platform, or what are the other ones? Blog writing was an assignment that we had given. So a lot of such experiments did take place. That's a major thing that we have done, at least I've done at an individual level.
So what advice would you give to students who are trying to cope up with transitioning from online to hybrid classes or offline classes, especially students from first year undergraduate classes who've not experienced college life before and they don't know what to expect?
Okay. I would address that on a larger perspective, because there are two things which not just students, all of us needs to be really updated and aware of. One is the pre and post COVID world is going to be certainly different, and lots of changes are happening both at the personal level as also the professional level. There is high prediction of a recession and unemployability and lots of other issues, which I would suggest a few documents later, which everyone needs to read and understand the kind of changes. Primarily, the World Economic Forum, they had come up with a report on the COVID-19 implications. Second thing which is not much discussed, but which is happening parallelly, is the automation anxiety. Now, what is automation anxiety? We are currently in the fourth phase of industrialization. Right? First, we had the steam engine, then we had electricity, then third phase was computer, and today we talk about cyber physical systems. Now, there are two reports which had come. One is the McKinsey's lost job gain report, which had come in 2017, and it says by 2030, 300 million jobs will get replaced with technology. So that's one report which I want everyone to kind of go back and read. And another report is by a World Economic Forum, the Future of Jobs report, which they keep publishing every year. Both talks about the kind of skill sets which needs to be acquired by all of us to make ourselves relevant. So probably I don't wish to give any advice from my personal front, but there are reports which are published from authentic sources, which people can go back and try to introspect on how to make themselves relevant with the changes and the challenges which are coming.
Okay. So, like we all know, since last year everything has been online, classes have been online, assignments have been online, even exams have been online. So when it comes to evaluation of students, how would you say it is different from an online space, or the level of understanding, how does it differ from an online medium to an offline medium?
I think I partly addressed that question earlier, because students are scoring well, but is the learning effective? That's a big question mark, which as I said in one of the interviews that we did, we realized that the learning, there are lots of areas wherein learning needs to improve, because as an academic institution, and university is not just a center of excellence, it is also a center of experience. You end up learning a lot of things in campus, and there is a huge vacuum in that experiential learning. Fortunately for you guys, a lot of such experiments are happening in campus, but the problem is the assessment becomes slightly difficult in the online platforms, wherein sometimes even if you try out different things like conducting a surprise test or asking students to unmute and respond, you would end up seeing students in some strange places which you never expect. So what is happening on the other side is something really conspicuous we are completely ignorant of. But then there are attempts, but as I said, assessment is an area which requires a lot of intervention, a lot more of innovation to ensure effectiveness in the learning.
Since the pandemic started, we found different methods to carry on education. We've adapted different techniques, and we've seen a lot of changes happen in the last 1 year. So considering these changes that have already happened, what do you think is going to happen in the future? Do you think e-learning is going to take off once we're done with the context of the pandemic, or do you think, is it e-learning going to stay?
Okay, so Deloitte had done a study and they came up with a report in October 2020, and the predictions are that 40% of the current work from home is going to continue. And there was an extended revised study by UNESCO which was done among the educational institutions as well, and there also the trend is pretty much similar. So the concepts like work from home or small office, home office, SOHO concept, those things are going to continue. And I mean, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm relying on a lot of reports which had come in the public domain from authentic sources like UNESCO or World Economic Forum. Those are the predictions. Another thing is concepts like blended learning. There is flipped classroom models, hybrid, which we are currently doing in our campus. Those things are also likely to continue, is what most of the predictions are. But then it's also a time that we had this national education policy, the new education policy. So there also you would find a lot of emphasis on upskilling or reskilling the curriculum, the students, the need for. I mean, they were also relied on a report of UNESCO which says that the graduates of Indian colleges or universities are unemployable. So the problem is not unemployment now, it is unemployability. People aren't employable. So there will be a lot of intervention in the academic space to make students more employable, to find a purpose in what they are doing, and that flexibility is accommodated in new education policy. To just to sum up, a lot of revisions I'm expecting in line with the new education policy at the national level. Second is a kind of sensitization and orientation about both the pandemic as also the expected automation anxiety which is there currently about how many jobs will be taken over by the through mechanization. That would also create a new sense of responsibility and purpose in academics. And I think a lot of initiatives people have started doing in the academic space, including our institution.
With that, we come to the end of this interview with Professor Rishikesh from the Department of Commerce. Thank you, sir, for taking time out from your busy schedule and joining us. Thank you for being here. And thank you, audience, for watching and sticking around till the end.